Hello, my name is Dr. Rodney Davis, and I'm an associate professor at Troy University in Troy, Alabama, United States. Welcome to From Research to Advocacy, Leadership in Action Research. This presentation explores how research becomes more than a report, how it becomes a catalyst for change. We'll look at how action research, when led with purpose, can inform policy, guide practice, and improve lives. We'll examine the key roles within a research team, the leadership approaches that foster collaboration and sustainability, and the strategies that turn data into influence. Ultimately, this session is about building the mindset, the methods, and the momentum to ensure your research doesn't stop at discovery, it leads to impact. At its core, research is a quest, a search for truth, understanding, and improvement. It's the engine that drives innovation, shapes policy, and refines practice. It helps us see what's possible, what's effective, and what's needed next. But research isn't just about discovery. It's about usefulness. Knowledge only fulfills its purpose when it informs action, influences systems, and improves lives. That's why scholars and research teams have a deeper responsibility, not just to uncover findings, but to make sure those findings are accessible, relevant, and impactful, to move research from insight to influence. Purposeful research bridges the gap between inquiry and application. It doesn't stop at understanding. It asks, what now? And in a time when misinformation spreads faster than facts, credible, peer-reviewed research becomes more important than ever. It's a beacon, a light cutting through the noise to guide thoughtful decisions, ethical action, and meaningful progress. That's the promise and the responsibility of research with purpose. Why do we need a team-based approach to action research? Because sustainable impact depends on more than just good data. It requires collaboration across roles and disciplines. Action research is about investigating real-world problems, gathering evidence, and driving meaningful change. But no single person can carry that process from start to finish alone. Researchers identify problems and collect data. Policy experts translate those findings into actionable, systematic recommendations. Advocates and connectors bring those recommendations to decision makers. Without a team, even the best research may never lead to real change. Just as important, research teams are the foundation of credible, impactful scholarship. Diverse teams bring broader perspectives, improving the relevance and applicability of findings across contexts. Teams enable advocacy by pooling networks, skills, and voices, creating louder, more persuasive presence in the policy space. Collective research increases legitimacy, particularly when engaging with public audiences and policymakers. A unified, diverse team speaks with authority and balance. And effective teams are better positioned to translate findings into actions, moving ideas from page to the practice. Let's not forget that these core reasons for behind team-based approach. You get multiple perspectives, which equals richer insights. There's shared ownership, which means increased buy-in. Next, you have sustainability, which requires continuity. Ongoing cycles needing support. And lastly, effective advocacy needs a network. Researchers are the investigators at the heart of every research to impact team. High-performing researchers do more than collect data. They are curious, principled, and precise. They ask the hard questions, those questions that lead to deeper understanding and real solutions. Their work is grounded in ethical rigor, methodological skill, and a strong commitment to truth, even when the findings are unexpected or uncomfortable. What sets high-performing research apart isn't just technical skill, it's their ability to connect insight to impact. They know how to frame a research question that matters, design a study that's sound, and interpret data in ways that are meaningful to real-world practice. There are also clear communicators, able to translate complex findings for policymakers and practitioners and communities. In collaborative settings, they are open-minded and responsive, knowing that research doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's part of a larger effort to improve lives, inform decisions, and shape the future. In short, a high-performing researcher is not just an expert, they're a catalyst for change. Policy experts are the strategists who transform research into action. High-performing policy experts are bridge builders. They take the deep insights uncovered by the researchers and translate them into feasible, system-ready recommendations. Their strength lies in understanding not only what should change, but how to make that change possible within the real-world constraints of legislation, regulation, and institutional priorities. They are systems thinkers, capable of seeing the bigger picture, how an idea fits into existing policies, impacts stakeholders, and aligns with long-term goals. Their thinking is both strategic and grounded. They know when to push, when to adapt, and how to shape messages that resonate with decision makers. High-performing policy experts are also skilled synthesizers. They take complex research and distill it into clear, actionable language, often through policy briefs, strategic memos, and guidance documents. They speak the language of governance without losing the spirit of the research. And just as importantly, they bring diplomacy and foresight to the table. They anticipate resistance, navigate competing interests, and build coalitions that move ideas forward. In short, a high-performing policy expert is not just a translator of knowledge, they are an architect of change. Finally, let's talk about the advocates and connectors, the voices that carry research into the rooms where decisions are made. High-performing advocates are mobilizers. They ensure that the research and policy don't stop at publication or proposal. They turn knowledge into momentum. These individuals are master communicators who know how to frame findings in ways that inspire, persuade, and galvanize action. They are deeply networked and relational, building bridges between research teams, communities, decision makers, and the public. Whether through a compelling narrative, a strategic campaign, or a quiet meeting with the right person at the right time, they know how to move ideas through systems. High-performing connectors are also emotionally intelligent and culturally aware. They know how to listen, how to speak to diverse audiences, and how to shape messages that resonate across differences. They don't just share findings, they humanize them. Above all, they are relentlessly committed to seeing change happen. They understand that advocacy is not a one-time event, but an ongoing process of engagement, persuasion, and persistence. In short, high-performing advocates and connectors are not just the voice of the research, they are its force for impact. Let's talk about what makes a high-performing team, especially in the context of collaborative research or educational research. At the heart of every successful team is purpose and clarity. High-performing teams are built around clear goals and shared vision. Everyone understands the why behind the work, and there's alignment on what success looks like. Roles and responsibilities are clearly defined, so each member knows how their contributions fit into a bigger picture. And with the clarity that comes accountability, a shared commitment to results that follow through. But clarity alone isn't enough. Great teams are also thrive on diversity and expertise. They bring together different perspectives and areas of knowledge, which leads to richer discussions and more innovative solutions. These teams make decisions collaboratively, valuing input from every member, not just the loudest voice. And they never stop growing. A culture of continuous learning and capacity building ensures the team stays agile while informed. Just as the culture of trust and support, and that's also important. High-performing teams foster psychological safety. People feel safe to speak up, ask questions, and challenge the status quo. They embrace regular feedback and reflective practice, always looking for ways to improve both individually and as a group. And finally, they run on efficient communication. Meetings have a purpose. Communication flows clearly, and no one is left in the dark. When these elements come together, clarity, diversity, trust, commitment, you don't just have a team. You have a high-functioning, forward-moving force for innovation and change. Let's take a moment to understand how teams evolve over time, because even high-performing teams don't start out that way. Back in 1965, psychologist Bruce Tuckman introduced a model that has become foundational in understanding group dynamics. Tuckman studied group behavior and noticed that most teams follow a predictable pattern of development. He identified 4 key stages. Later he expanded to 5 that teams must navigate to become truly effective. Here's a look at Tuckman's model of team development. Number 1, forming. This is the beginning stage. Team members are just getting to know each other. Roles aren't yet clear, and there's a lot of polite behavior and surface-level interaction. People are figuring out expectations and boundaries. Number 2, storming. Conflict begins to emerge as personalities surface and differing opinions collide. This is a critical phase. If not navigated well, teams may fracture. But if handled constructively, this stage sets the foundation for deeper trust and collaboration. The 3rd stage, norming. In this stage, the team starts to find its rhythm. Roles become clearer, communication improves, and the group begins to build cohesion. There's a stronger sense of trust and mutual respect. The 4th stage, performing. Now the team is clicking. Members are focused, roles are fluid yet functional, and the group works efficiently towards shared goals. This is where high performance happens. Creative collaboration and problem solving are at their peak. The final stage, 5, adjourning. Finally, when the project ends or the team disbands, this phase acknowledges closure. It's a time for reflection, recognition, and transition. Understanding these stages helps leaders diagnose where a team is in its journey and what support it needs to keep progressing. Not every team makes it to the performing stage, but with awareness and guidance, more can. If we want our research to lead to action, we must start with the right kind of leadership. Advocacy begins with the team, and that means leadership can't just be about delegation or deadlines. It must be about inspiration, inclusion, and influence. Strong leaders in research teams know how to balance transformational leadership, which inspires vision, with servant leadership, which builds trust and supports growth. Both are essential for empowering a team that's ready to advocate for its work. They also lead with emotional intelligence, fostering trust, handling conflict with care, and creating the conditions where people feel safe enough to speak boldly and act courageously. Most importantly, advocacy-focused leaders help the team see beyond the publication. They create a culture where outreach isn't a task, It's a shared mission. They encourage initiative, promote shared ownership, and empower team members to serve as ambassadors for the research in conversations, in presentations, and in policy circles. Because advocacy isn't a job for one, it's a team effort, and it begins with purposeful, people-centered leadership. Collaboration is at the heart of any successful team, but it doesn't happen by accident. It takes the right tools, techniques, and intentional practices to make it work, especially in research teams where timelines, personalities, and pressures can all collide. Let's start with tools. Platforms like Google Workspace, Trello, Slack, and Zoom allow teams to communicate clearly, assign tasks, track progress, and work asynchronously across time zones. These digital tools keep everything accessible and transparent and reduce the friction of long email threads or missed messages. Tools alone aren't enough. Effective teams also document their progress and share the workload intentionally. Task lists, shared folders, and clear timelines help make sure everyone knows who's doing what and by when. This builds trust and prevents misunderstandings. Equally important is setting boundaries and managing conflict. High-performing teams create a shared understanding of how they communicate, what's expected, what's off-limits, and how to give and receive feedback. And when disagreements arise, which they will, strong teams address them early, directly, and respectfully. This ensures that tension becomes a source of growth, not division. Ultimately, collaboration is a practice, not a one-time event, and when done right, it transforms a group of individuals into a cohesive, productive, and resilient team. Collaboration isn't just about starting strong. It's about sustaining momentum through the life of the project and beyond. To do that, high-performing teams set clear milestones and deliverables that are aligned not just with academic outcomes, but also with advocacy goals. This ensures that the work is consistently moving toward both scholarly contribution and real-world influence. Along the way, it's critical to document impact as it happens, gathering stories, data, and feedback from those affected by the work. These small snapshots of impact will be vital when it's time to report, publish, and advocate. Teams should also take time to celebrate strategic wins, not just when a paper gets accepted, but when a community partner receives or gives positive feedback, or a policymaker requests a briefing. These moments affirm that the work matters and motivate the team to keep going. Another key to long-term success is mentorship, not just in research methods, but in communication and advocacy skills. Teaching team members how to translate findings and speak to broader audiences ensures sustainability, even as personnel shift. Finally, advocacy doesn't end when the project wraps. Strong teams prepare for post-project dissemination by assigning roles, setting a communication timeline, and identifying the channels through which the work will continue to reach people. In short, sustaining collaboration means building a culture that looks beyond the report and toward the real-world change the research is meant to support. Let's talk about one of the most overlooked but essential elements of advocacy-driven research, impact tracking. Impact tracking is the process of systematically capturing how your research influences knowledge, policy, practice, or public awareness, both during and after the project. But it's more than just checking boxes. It's about gathering the stories, data, and signals that show your work is making a difference. And here's why it matters. Impact tracking ensures your research doesn't just stop at publication. It gives you the evidence you need to demonstrate relevance, communicate value, secure funding, and influence change. It also strengthens your advocacy because when you can show how your work is being used, shared, or cited, your message carries greater weight. So how do we do it? Start with impact journals or logs, shared documents where you track key events, media mentions, community reactions, and meaningful feedback. These informal notes often become the foundation of powerful impact narratives. Next, build data dashboards with tools like Google Sheets, Airtable, or Tableau to visualize quantitative indicators, citations and downloads, attendance, engagement rates. These numbers help you monitor and communicate reach over time. Use feedback tools like Google Forms or Padlet to gather direct input from stakeholders. Quantitative stories or qualitative stories that often speak louder than charts. Plan your dissemination timeline with tools like Trello, Asana, and Miro. Advocacy doesn't happen all at once. It's strategic, targeted, and often ongoing. Having a plan helps keep your message alive after the research ends. And finally, think long-term. Use digital platforms like MailChimp and LinkedIn or Canva to craft targeted messaging, and knowledge repositories like ResearchGate or institutional databases to keep your work accessible and discoverable well into the future. Because in advocacy-oriented research, impact isn't just what you do, it's what people do with your work after you've shared it. Sharing your research with the world doesn't happen by accident. It requires planning, coordination, and timing. That's where a dissemination timeline comes in. Start by identifying your key audiences. Who needs to hear your findings in order to act? Policymakers, practitioners, community members, funders, the public. Clarifying this at the start allows you to craft messages that speak directly to their needs. Next, package the message in a format that fits the audience. A policymaker may prefer a short, actionable brief. A community group may connect more with a visual one-pager or a storytelling approach. Academics may need detailed findings, while the media may need a concise quote. Then sequence your outreach. Plan your communications in phases. Before publication to create awareness, at the moment of release for visibility, and afterward to reinforce your message and deepen engagement. Be sure to assign roles. Dissemination is a team effort. Some may write, others may present, and others may manage follow-up. Clear roles prevent overlap and ensure accountability. Finally, map out your milestones. Use collaborative tools to build a realistic timeline, track progress, and check in regularly. A thoughtful dissemination timeline doesn't just increase visibility, it amplifies impact. It ensures your research doesn't end in a report. It lives on in conversations, decisions, and change. Writing the message is where your research gains traction. It's not just about sharing what you found, it's about framing it in a way that people care, understand, and remember. Start by telling the story of your research. What was the challenge? Why did it matter? What did you discover? And most importantly, what happens if we act or if we don't? Then frame your data in human terms. Don't just report numbers. Translate them into lived experiences. Use a quote, a case study, or a scenario that puts the audience in the shoes of those affected. You also need to align your message with the values of your audience. A policymaker may care about cost effectiveness or long-term outcomes. A community group may value fairness, opportunity, or lived experience. The message must meet them where they are. Clarity is key. Use plain, accessible language, not academic jargon. Simplify complex ideas without losing their meaning. A well-crafted message is one people can repeat, share, and act on. Finally, balance emotion with evidence. Your data earns their trust. Your story earns their attention. Together, they move people to care and to act. Before we talk about how to share research, we need to be clear on why it matters. Put simply, research has no impact if it stays on the shelf. No matter how rigorous or groundbreaking, it can't inform decisions, improve lives, or shape policy unless it's shared, translated, and acted on. Decision makers, whether they're in the classroom, boardrooms, or legislatures, need evidence to guide them. Our job is to ensure that the right people have access to that evidence in a format they can use. Beyond strategy, transparency matters. Sharing research builds trust with communities, funders, institutions, and the public. It shows that our work is accountable and rooted in real-world relevance. And finally, we have an ethical obligation to share. If our work is funded by the public or impacts communities, dissemination isn't just good practice, it's a responsibility. Advocacy starts with awareness, and awareness starts with us. That's why sharing research isn't an afterthought, it's part of the mission. Once your message is clear, the next question is, where will it be heard? Disseminating your research requires a strategic mix of channels and tactics chosen with your audience and goals in mind. Start with policy briefs and op-eds, called opinion editorials. These are excellent tools for translating research into persuasive, plain language arguments. Briefs target policymakers. Op-eds raise public awareness and invite dialogue. Social media allows you to break the message into bite-sized, shareable pieces. Infographics, quotes, short videos, or story snapshots. Platforms like LinkedIn and Twitter are all particularly effective for academic and policy audiences. Don't overlook conferences and public forums. Speaking at events, especially those attended by decision makers or funding sources, positions you as a thought leader and opens the door to deeper conversations. For direct influence, legislative outreach and lobbying can be powerful. That might mean meeting with a lawmaker's staff, submitting a formal briefing, or even testifying in a public hearing. Your research can inform actual policy if it's presented at the right time and place. Finally, collaborate with advocacy organizations and media. These partners already have networks, platforms, and public trust. They can help amplify your message and give it reach and resonance far beyond what you could have achieved alone. Remember, the power of research is not just in what it says, but in how and where it's shared. Once we've shared the research and engaged our audiences, the question becomes, did it make a difference? Evaluating advocacy impact means looking beyond the publication counts or presentation slides. It's about measuring the influence your work has had on thinking, on policy, on practice, and on people. Start by defining success early in the project. What outcomes are you aiming for? Is it to inform policy, shift public awareness, change institutional practice? When you name it clearly, you can track it meaningfully. Then look for both tangible and intangible indicators of success. Tangible metrics might include downloads, citations, media mentions, or funding allocations. But just as important are the intangible outcomes: changes in conversation, new partnerships formed, invitations to speak, or policy drafts that reflect your language. Both data and stories. Quantitative measures give you credibility. Qualitative feedback quotes, testimonials, stakeholder responses give you soul. Together, they tell a rich and compelling impact story. And most importantly, reflect and adapt. Advocacy is not a straight line. Take time to ask what worked, what missed the mark, what surprised us. These insights feed the next cycle of research, messaging, and dissemination. In the end, evaluating impact is not about proving the work mattered, it's about learning how to make it matter even more. To close this conversation, let's look beyond the project and into the culture we want to create. If we want research to have real-world impact, we must go beyond individual efforts. We must build a culture of advocacy. This means making it part of how we think, how we plan, and how we measure success. It begins with embedding advocacy into research planning. From the very beginning, we ask, who needs this work? How will it be used? How can we prepare to share it with those outside our field? Second, we model and mentor. Seasoned researchers and leaders must demonstrate how to engage stakeholders and train others, especially early career scholars, to feel confident in public-facing work. We must also recognize and reward advocacy. If all the praise goes to peer-reviewed journal articles, we send a message. But when institutions celebrate public impact, we affirm that this work matters too. Next, interdisciplinary collaboration should be the norm, not the exception. Bringing in perspectives from policy, media, and community organizations makes the work more relevant and more likely to be adopted. Finally, a culture of advocacy needs infrastructure. We must invest in the systems that make outreach sustainable, whether that's communications support, media training, or formal partnerships with policy and advocacy groups. Because in the end, advocacy isn't just about visibility, it's about responsibility. When research can make a difference, we have a duty to make sure that it does. Let's wrap up this presentation by pulling together the major takeaways from what we've been talking about. First, strong research alone isn't enough. To create change, we need strong teams made up of researchers, policy experts, and advocates, each contributing their unique strengths toward a common goal. Second, leadership matters. Advocacy doesn't happen without vision, trust, and a commitment to inclusion. The kind of research that builds a culture of action, not just a publication. Third, collaboration must be intentional. Effective teams use tools, set boundaries, manage conflict, and celebrate progress. This doesn't happen by default. It takes care and consistency. Fourth, sharing your research is not optional. If we want to work to influence systems and improve lives, we must get serious about messaging, channels, and timing. We must treat dissemination as a core part of the research process, not an afterthought. And refine. We must ask, who did we reach? What changed? And how can we do even more next time? Because when research is done well and shared well, it doesn't just fill pages, it fuels progress. Well, thank you for listening to my presentation here on advocacy in action research. I appreciate your attendance at this conference. I have got the presentation here for you, so the organizers will send that out to you. If you would like a copy, you can have one. I'm happy to share it with you, and you can listen to it again. And that way, if you've missed anything, you'll be able to stop and restart the presentation. As always, take care, and look forward to another time together. Thank you.